Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Andy.
Thank you for joining me for this interview. Sarah, can I ask you to introduce yourself first, please?
My name is Sarah Howard. I run a software business in West Suffolk, and I am the chair of Abercroft Leisure in Suffolk, and I am also the chair of the British Chambers of Commerce.
Thank you. So, Sarah, my first question is this, and I ask this of most of those I interview, it's how are you looking after yourself and how are you looking after your teams?
I would say in the first 3 or 4 weeks, I didn't look after myself. I've never worked so hard in my entire life. I was sat here at the computer for hours and hours, and it just one day blended into another. And then I sort of took charge and took hold of myself because it wasn't sustainable. And I've been much more careful about breaking things up. I try and set hours when I'm working, and then I'll interrupt them. I'll go and walk the dog a couple of times a day, and go off and do what I need to do, and not feel I have to be connected completely all the time. I think there's been a massive adjustment for everybody to get away from the idea they have to be working for 7 or 8 hours continually at a desk, that they can break it up and they can make the most of the situation of them working from home. So I found my garden for the first time ever. I've lived in this house for 24 years, and for the first time my garden has flowers in it and vegetables. So I've been a bit obsessed with my vegetables, and in fact I've even grown a lemon tree.
Oh wow.
from a size lemon in my gin and tonic. So that's given me some interest away, and it's made me come away and go outside and really enjoy my house. And it's the first time in 24 years I feel, it's strange, but I really feel I got to know my house and where I live because I spent so much time here. And then as far as my teams go, obviously I haven't got a formal team, but I'm a chair of 2 organisations. So looking after chief exec, obviously the chief execs have an enormous responsibility on their shoulders. So making sure they've got someone to talk to, they take time out as well, has been really important. And to talk to them about how they're looking after their teams and how they're keeping in contact, and to try and make sure that they just take time out for themselves as well, has been part of my role. So, you know, mixing things up, not being rigid about when I do things, and make sure I get outside and get some good exercise too, because I'm missing the gym, I'm missing swimming.
That's really good. That's interesting that you found new things that were on your doorstep, literally. But I also like the fact that you describe, in my words, unplugging yourself from the work system.
Yeah, that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
It's hard to do sometimes because your brain is whirring and you've got so much you need to think about. And with the Zoom calls, it especially initially, every single call, every single video chat was important. And you miss that human contact as well. I'm very outgoing. I love to be with people. I love to find out what's going on. And as we were saying earlier, you lose that contact. You don't get the chat. So you have to take time out and think of other ways of finding time, really.
It's incessant, isn't it? My second question is, so have businesses and the people associated with them adapted during the pandemic, and how are they looking after their staff?
I think from my perspective, most of the people I know, they have been in a position where they can work from home. So they've shut their offices down and they've gone and worked from home. The issue with that is it was done in a very emergency way, wasn't it? All of a sudden, we were suddenly working at home. There was no preamble, no preparation for it, and no rules set down on how to do it either. So that initially was difficult. So we then looked at what you do to make that sustainable, so that people are not doing it from the basis of running on adrenaline and keeping going, but that's actually how they now work for a while yet, I think. So we did some work on working out what the boundaries were, giving people not rules but guidelines on what they can do, and giving them the freedom as well. As I said earlier, a really good example is at the beginning of this, my daughter came and worked from home, and she felt she had to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours. And persuading her that's not what you have to do and not what was expected, and that she could pop out for half an hour and do something else and then come back refreshed. So looking at the new ways of working, really, and getting the most from working at home. There's also been the need to look after the furloughed staff as well, because obviously they're feeling very out of touch. Some people think they're just sitting at home having a whale of a time, but there's a lot of people worried about their jobs, feeling not valued because they're not there and they weren't the ones that were asked to stay. And 9 times out of 10, the reason they aren't there is because their job just is not doable at all. So they need them off site. So Abercroft's a perfect example. The vast majority of the people who work at Abercroft have to be on site to do what they do. So looking after the furlough staff has been important. We've done things like regular calls with the staff, just in small cohorts, updating them what's going on so they feel part of it still. They've done quiz nights online and things like that, and just keeping the contact going, and then equally making sure the people that are still working are not overdoing it, because they have felt under pressure as well. So to make sure they try and regulate their working hours and what they take on, and talking to them so they've got somewhere to what's the word? Let rip isn't quite the word, but vent and talk about what's worrying them, and not lose that contact. We've got some members of staff who are living on their own, so they've missed that contact. And I was chatting to one the other day, and now the lockdown has eased somewhat. She was going off to see some friends, and she said, I haven't had a hug for 3 months. And I can't imagine that, and just not having that human contact on a day-to-day basis. So there's a massive duty of care when you're running an organisation, I think.
Absolutely. We've gone from one extreme to another, haven't we? And there's got to be a middle ground somewhere about working from home, and because we need human contact, as you say.
I mean, I don't think it. You've got to find some positives out of this, haven't you? It's been devastating in so many ways, but I don't think we will go back to working the way we did before. For the people that don't have to be on site to do their job, but we need to come up with a hybrid, because you can't expect people to work 5 days a week from home. You do need that human contact. So I think the way offices are used is going to change, and the expectations, and frankly now the idea for me of spending 3 hours there and back on a train to go to a meeting, which I could actually do here, no longer appeals. It's a waste of time, but we still need some human contact as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we need purpose as well. That's where you were talking about around being furloughed. Third question is this: so how are people changing, evolving, adapting so that they can attract young people into their businesses?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because there's a lot of competition for good young staff coming through now. In the olden days when I started work, I just looked at the salary and I looked for somebody that would take me, and I took the job that offered me £200 more than the other one. But now they are so much more discerning. They want to, obviously the salary is almost a given. They know what they're worth financially. They're then looking for what a company's corporate social responsibility policies are, their equality policies, making sure that they have equal pay. There's a chance to buy back holiday. They can be flexible, and they're perfectly willing to commit, and they will work very hard. But they're much more aware of their rights and the balance, their work-life balance. I think to a certain extent they've seen their parents slog their guts out and work all hours, and they don't want to do that. And they realise there are other ways of doing things. So companies are having to get a lot more flexible to attract the right young people into their business. So part of that is what we've been catapulted into, which we were heading towards anyway, of the ability to work agilely and flexibly. I think if one positive we can take from what we've been going through in the last few months is I think it's brought flexible and agile working forward 5 years. It's not going to go back to what it was. So a company's having to be agile to attract staff in. Obviously, things are going to be a bit different now. There's going to be a lot more demand than there is supply. But I think if companies want to carry on getting the right people, they're going to have to carry on developing and growing, and realising what the expectations are now, that they are very, very different to what they were when we first started work. That's
interesting. That's good. So more focus on well-being of staff right from the outset. And in the past, I would have heard somebody say, employers expect CVs to be more than just qualifications. They want to see that the young person has been volunteering or has done this and that. And what you're saying is now it's almost flipped over, and the young people are saying, we demand this of you as an employer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely right. And it's good because you're getting a lot more commitment from people as well. If you're running the company well and you're doing the right thing and they feel part of it, they're staying with you.
Good. So yeah, that's fantastic. So my last question, thank you for staying with me. It's about the future. So what do you think the learning and the challenges will be as a result of the outbreak?
Well, I think firstly, it's really important that we take the learning away and develop it, because this has been so devastating in every respect. The devastation on the economy is just going to get worse. We're going to see a lot more redundancies and business issues before we see any improvement. So we've got to learn how to do more with less.
Yeah.
And to me, I think the collaboration we've seen over the last few months has to carry on. I've got good examples of where organisations have been working together, and one organisation has had to put money up front for someone else to do something, but they've benefited in the end. But having that faith and that partnership working, I think, has to carry on. It's essential, because there just is not going to be as much money flying around as there used to be. When budgets were already tight, they're going to get tighter. But I think also people have, there's been a change, I think, in the way people think as well. They are a lot more public minded, civic minded. So I need to harness that and work with people in the community a lot more, and give them responsibility for what they're doing themselves as well. I've seen some fantastic examples of just, my next door neighbour putting notes through old people's doors saying, call me if you need any help. And you just take that out exponentially of how it's been working through business and everywhere else. I don't want us to lose that. And I'm already seeing examples of people going back in their boxes and trying to go back to where they were before. And that's no way forward. We've got to get something out of this.
Thank you, Sarah. Unfortunately, the signal's really become rough in the last couple of minutes, but I could hear you so vocally. We've got it on audio. That's very clear, and it's a very stark future. But you're absolutely right about partnership and collaboration. This has been happening more and more so with the health and care sector and its voluntary community sector locally. So it's good to hear that that's happening at your level as well. Yeah, thank you.
And I think there are ways we can do things a lot better, like the Zoom calls. I don't think working from home forever is the answer. I think a combination of both is the way forward. So there's lots of things we can learn from this and take away and make sure things improve in the future.
Sarah, thank you very much for your time.
That's right, pleasure.
Nice technical problems, but it's been really interesting talking to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.